Hey boys, a bit different this week. We've missed Sunday school for the last 8 or 9 weeks, but it's great to be back. It's a bit different. I'm in the same place I normally am, the same seat, but you're not. You're at home, so lucky for you. I might be at home next week, but it's great to be back in Sunday school. It's great to speak to you again, and I'm looking forward to telling you another story from the Bible. Now, we're not going to sing this week. I'm just going to tell you a story. I'm sure you can all sing at home, but it's great to be able to tell you a story from the Bible. So I hope you've all got your Bibles. Our story this week is going to be in Genesis, and it's going to be about a man that was locked down, a man that was locked in. And we've gone through many different brothers, and the last time we were here, we heard about how Joseph had brothers and how they didn't like him and how they sold him and how they threw him into a pit. And this week we're going to continue that. The last time we heard it, we see similarities between how Joseph was sold and how Jesus was sold, and how Joseph was put into a pit and how Jesus was put into a cave, a tomb. Well, this week we're going to hear how Joseph was put into jail. So not long after Joseph was taken away, he was taken into Egypt. And when he was put into Egypt, he was sold to a really great man. So if you want to follow it, look in Genesis chapter 39. So he was sold to a really important man. Now that important man was called Potiphar. And he was one of the king's officers. He was the captain of the palace guards. Really, really important. And Joseph became a servant or a slave to Potiphar. Well, God looked after Joseph, and everything Joseph did, God blessed it. And Potiphar noticed this, and Potiphar ended up putting Joseph in charge of his house. Well, one time Potiphar was away, and his wife noticed Joseph and noticed how good looking Joseph was, how handsome he was, and she kept on trying to talk to him. Well, she talked, and the next time she saw him, she talked to him, and she kept on trying to talk to him. Well, one day Joseph walked in, and Potiphar's wife grabbed hold of Joseph's robes. Well, Joseph ran away at his hardest. He tried to get away from her. Well, she was angry, and when Potiphar got home, she told Potiphar a lot of lies. Well, Potiphar was raging at Joseph, and he said, "I've had it with you, Joseph. Jail. You're going to be locked up." Well, Joseph was put into jail. Nothing that Joseph did. Joseph didn't do anything wrong. It was the lies that Potiphar's wife told. Well, God always looks after us. And he looked after Joseph. And now if you ask God to look after you, he'll look after you. Just ask God, pray to him, and he'll look after you as well. Well, God looked after Joseph. And when Joseph was in jail, he did what he was told, and God blessed him. In fact, even the guards noticed Joseph. What a nice guy he is. And the guards let Joseph be in charge of all the other prisoners. And God again blessed Joseph. Well, one day, Joseph got 2 new prisoners in to join him. One was a waiter who worked for the king, and the other was a baker that worked for the king, and they were thrown in jail. Well, Joseph was looking after them, and they went away to sleep one night, and they woke up the next day, and Joseph looked at them, and they looked really worried. And Joseph said, "What's wrong with you two? You look really worried." Well, the waiter said to Joseph, "I had a dream last night, and I don't know what it means." Well, Joseph said, "I can't tell you what dreams mean. Only God gives us the ability to tell what dreams mean." Well, God had given Joseph the ability to tell what the waiter and the baker's dreams were. So the waiter said, I'll tell you what it is, and you can maybe tell me what it means. There was a grapevine that was growing, and it had 3 branches. And on the 3 branches grew leaves. And on the branches grew grapes. And I took those grapes and I squeezed them into the king's cup. And I gave the cup to the king. Oh, Joseph said, I'll tell you what that means. The 3 branches are 3 years. 3 days. The 3 branches are 3 days. And in 3 days, you'll be released from jail. And you'll be put back to be a waiter for the king. Wow, said the waiter. Well, Joseph said, and when you're back with the king, can you please remember me stuck here in jail? The waiter said, oh, yes, I'll do that. Well, the baker, he said, I had a dream as well. Can I tell you what my dream means? I dreamt that I had 3 baskets on my head full of bread. And the birds came down from the sky and they ate everything out the baskets. Well, Joseph said, I'll tell you what that means. The 3 baskets are 3 days, just like the waiter. And in 3 days, the king is going to release you as well. Oh, says the baker. But Joseph says, it's not as good as that. Don't get too excited, he said. The 3 baskets are 3 days, and in 3 days, you'll be released from jail. But Mr. Baker, the king's going to kill you in 3 days. You're going to lose your head. Oh no, he thought. Well, in 3 days, exactly what God had told Joseph the dreams meant happened. The waiter was back with the cup of the king, and the baker, he had died. Well, unfortunately for Joseph, the waiter forgot all about Joseph, and he was left in jail, in lockdown. But, boys, that's not the end of the story, because I think next week we're going to get out of lockdown and we'll be able to go out a little bit more. We'll maybe even be able to meet up with some of our family. And Joseph, he's going to get out of jail. A few years later, the king, he had a dream. And he dreamt that there were 7 big, fat cows walking out of a river. And once they were out, 7 little skinny cows came out of the river. And the little skinny cows, well, they ate the big fat cows. And the king woke up. Oh, what a dream! What does that mean? Thought the king. Well, the next night, the king went back to sleep, still traumatized from the night's dream before. And the next night he dreamt that there was 7 bits of corn. 7 big fat bits of corn. And then the wind came and blew it, and there was 7 scrawny, poor looking bits of corn. And the king woke up. Oh, what does that mean? I've got 7 fat cows, 7 thin cows, and the thin cows ate the fat cows, and now I've got 7 really bonny bits of corn and 7 scrawny bits of corn. What does all this 7 fat ones and 7 thin ones mean? And he thought to himself, what will I do? I know. I'll get the really bright people in Egypt, the magicians and all the really intelligent people. That's what you do when you don't know what to do. You get the people that are brainy to help. So he got them and he said, look, here's my dreams. What do they mean? And they all looked at each other and they said, I don't know. I don't know what that means. No idea. The king was raging. What have I got all you people for if you can't tell me what these things mean? Well, the waiter holding the cup thought to himself, hey, I know somebody who can tell what these dreams mean. He told me mine. And he said to the king, King, I know a little guy, a Hebrew boy, a boy in the jail who can tell what dreams mean. He's got the help of God, and with God's help, he can tell you what they all mean. His name's Joseph. Well, the king thought, you've got it. Let's get that Joseph here. So they called Joseph, and Joseph came in front of the king, and the king said, look, I had dreams too, and they're quite similar, but nobody here can tell me what they mean. And Joseph said, well, I can't tell you the answer. It's God who can tell you what dreams mean. So he said, well, what I'll do is I'll tell you them, and you can see if God can tell you what they mean. And he said, here's what they are. I had 7 big fat cows and then 7 little thin cows, and the thin cows ate the fat cows, and then I had 7 really nice big fat bits of corn, and then 7 thin bits came, and what does it all mean? Well, Joseph said, I'll tell you what that means. 7. There will be 7 great years in Egypt, where there'll be plenty food and plenty juice, plenty everything. There's heaps of stuff. You could fill your belly all the time, every day. You name it, you can have it. There's heaps. So much, you just don't know what to do with it. Oh, the king thought, that's great. But Joseph said, I'll tell you what the 7 thin ones won't mean. After these 7 great years, there'll be 7 really, really, really bad ones where there'll be nothing. You won't be able to go and get whatever you want to eat. There'll be no food. There'll be nothing. The king said, that's terrible. Joseph, there'll be a great famine across the land of Egypt. The king thought, Joseph, that is brilliant. That you and your God can tell me that. I need to give you a really important job in the land. You're going to become the officer of the land of Egypt, and you're going to work all this out. And you're going to be out of that jail, and you're going to be free, and you're going to be helping everyone in the land of Egypt. Wow, boys. Joseph was free. Joseph's lockdown in jail was over. He'd been given a really important job, and it was all because of the help that God gave him. See, boys, God can help each one of us. Some of us might not have had much fun in these last 8 or 9 weeks, stuck in the house and not much to do, and we can't see our friends, and it might not have been good. Well, Joseph was stuck in jail. But because of his faith in God, God helped him through it, helped him through the tough times. And the same God that helped Joseph can help you today. The Bible tells us that we're all sinners. The Bible tells us that we've all got something in our hearts called sin. And the Bible tells us that to get rid of that sin, we have to put our faith and trust in Jesus. And just like Joseph put his trust in God, for God to see him through the hard times, if we put our faith and trust in Jesus, he'll see us through the hard times. If we put our faith and trust in him, he'll take that sin away and we'll be right with Jesus and right with God. If we don't take that, if God doesn't take that sin away and we don't put our faith and trust in Jesus, then we won't be right with God. Boys, Joseph did what God asked him to do. And he went through some good times and he went through some bad times. And we'll go through some good times and we'll go through some bad times. But God will always be there to help. Boys, we have to put our faith and trust in the Lord Jesus. We have to ask him into our lives. And he can take our sin away and we'll be right with God. Now, it's great that we can do Sunday school like this. And it's great I can tell you stories from the Bible. I'm going to give you a little activity sheet. And if you can fill it in and send it back, I'll maybe next week mention who completed the best sheet. Well, boys, it's great to be able to have Sunday school again. I don't know if I'll be here next week. I might do it from my house. If you get to sit in your house, I'll get to sit in my house. But it's great that I can speak to you. Now, maybe you want to ask me questions. And I would love for you to try and speak back to me and ask me questions. Well, thanks for listening, boys. And I will see you next week.